together. So in today's episode, we're joined by agency growth strategist, author, coach, and founder of the agency Growth Pad. Ali moves beyond founder-led sales, builds scalable systems, and creates businesses that can grow and in turn exit. Before launching the agency Growth Pad, she played a key role, in the growth of Exposure Ninja, helping the agency double in size and expand globally. Over time, she's seen the digital world change massively and is now using that experience to help founders build smarter, more sustainable agencies. So today, we're going to unpack Ali's journey, explore the realities of scaling, and what truly makes an agency exit worthy. Ali, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. What an intro. Thanks,
Did I tick enough off there? Was that all right?
I mean, I feel like you covered a lot of bases. So
did you miss anything?
Did I miss anything? Hopefully not. I tend to do that.
Ali, welcome to the pod. So to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, summary up to Exposure Ninja, and then we'll talk about that in a bit of detail?
Sure. So I actually had quite a strange way into what I'm doing, I suppose, in that I started out doing, I thought when I left uni, I thought I was going to do English. It was just, I felt like it was going to be like the easiest degree for me to go
Yeah,
and do.
so that was your degree, English literature.
Yeah, I felt like it was like my most natural kind of thing that I'd be able to do. So I took a gap year, ended up doing a foundation degree in art as a gap year, which was like really not the plan at all. Did the first year of English and was just like not enjoying it at all. So dropped out, went and did psychology instead. Did that, actually finished that one, so that was good. And then thought, I'm going to go and do clinical psychology. No, changed my mind again and actually went and started working in marketing for a small business. It was like a family-run business selling some really strange stuff. So
how did you arrive at that then?
Well, my mum had always been in marketing, and I felt like psychology, marketing.
There's a lot of overlapping with
bit
that.
of English, like
it does all go well
kind of, there's
together,
sort of
doesn't it?
It sort of works. It's not 100% a normal route, but I thought I'd give it a whirl, basically. And yeah, so we were selling mannequins, clothes hangers, all the stuff that you need for shops, basically. Quite a weird one, but it was so much fun because I mean the website hadn't been redone since before I was born, like it was old, and they were just happy to kind of let me loose on it and do what I wanted to do. So as a first job, I mean, pretty exciting. I could do what I wanted with it, take it as far as we could, and in that process I just got obsessed with learning about digital. So I really got into particularly the SEO side of things. And that's how I came across Exposure Ninja. They helped us build out the website. I actually hand drew out a website, which I now realise is the most ridiculous thing ever. And if you see an agency client, but I was just like, it's in my head and I just need to get it out, right?
Is that not a thing anymore? I love that. I'm old school.
I mean, I love it. Yeah, I love it. And like using your own handwriting and stuff, there's something in that, I think. I mean, mine's illegible, but there's something in that. And so yeah, I like literally hand drew the website. They built it. It worked really well. It made a big difference to that business. And I started thinking about the agency and Exposure Ninja and Tim, and really liked working with them and their team. And so I went to the dark side and went and worked for them as an agency. I actually said to Tim, like, please, can I have a job? And he was like, we don't really have any jobs. So he kind of cobbled something together to get me in the door. It was half account management, half sales, just to kind of get me started. And I loved it. Anyone who's worked in an agency of any sort, be that recruitment agency or a marketing agency, knows that it's intense. Like lots of clients, lots of things happening. Service-based business is always fairly intense anyway, but the pace of it is really high. And I loved it. Absolutely kind of found my place there.
Do you think that going from working in-house to then working with an agency, do you think that first bit actually really helped you to be able to talk to clients and understand their needs a lot more?
For sure. Going from being a client and also in a small business, so I knew what I needed to do to be able to make the business owner comfortable in investing in the marketing. I knew kind of what was going to work, what wasn't going to work. So when you're then sat on the other side of the table pitching it, you kind of have that little bit of extra insight into how you can actually help them and what they're worried about. So yeah, I think it was really useful.
Yeah. So tell us about Exposure Ninja. If nobody knows anything about it, go from the start. So you started, was it just you and Tim then, or were there other people?
No. So I think they had around 30 staff when I started. So they were like, growing and doing well. They'd had some really strong growth years and just a really exciting agency, full service. And I would say like a lot of personality to that agency. They, it's called Exposure Ninja for a start. How can you not? And there are like little shinobi ninjas and all sorts as part of their kind of branding and their brand voice. Super not jargony. They really come from a place of wanting to educate marketers, which is why I found them. It's part of why I was so excited to kind of join in. So yeah, we started out on that journey about 30 people. And I think it was only 6 months in, they said, hey, we need our first account management like team leader because they're growing so fast. I said, sure, I'll give it a go. Why not? Did that for 6 months. And then Tim was saying that he needed to move outside of sales. He'd got caught in this kind of founder sales trap that I talk about quite a lot, where the founder has to do all of the sales and kind of gets stuck doing that piece. And he wanted to go and work on other things. He wanted to work on the business rather than in it, but also to explore mergers and acquisitions. And he said, do you want to give it a go? Like building out a sales team. And me being young and naive didn't know that this was kind of a massive problem that people. Yeah, I did not know what was down the road at all. I didn't know that this was something that lots of people have tried to solve and is really hard. So I just thought, why not? So went and did that, and we doubled the agency. We built out a really strong sales team. He now buys renewables energy businesses and stuff. So he's off doing what he wanted to do. And it was really good fun.
So getting into that then, with like building the sales team, to start off with, all the sales was being done by Tim, the managing director, sort of whatever he was, sort of thing. And then basically the rest of it was all account management. But then you moved into a role where you sort of built out that sales function to try and grow the business.
Yeah, so there was Tim, and then there was also a very good salesperson called Wayne, who was fantastic. And they were kind of working alongside each other. We had a few other kind of newer members of the team that Tim had hired, but they hadn't actually started yet.
Yeah.
And this was the point when I kind of took it on.
What was the first thing you did?
The first thing I did was to start trying to build a system and to codify what it was that Tim and Wayne were doing that was working. Both of them fantastic salespeople, but turning that into a process and something that other people can follow, while still being able to use their own personality, their own way of interacting with leads, I think it was the first thing. It was also the thing that never stops, is trying to get that right, and made the biggest difference.
So how did you build that process? Did you make them redundant straight away and say off you go sort of thing, or was it a script, or was it I'm curious to know the details of that.
So there are a few different things that I found really work along the way. Scripts I tend to avoid because I find that once someone's following a script, they kind of switch their brain off and they're doing the thing, and it's hard for them to then be able to interact in the conversation in a kind of, inverted commas, normal way. So there were a few different things that we did. One of them was to do some like feedback and listening programs. These are super fun. They're horrible in some ways because they make you cringe when you think, oh my God, someone's going to be listening to my calls. But they really worked because we would try and make a very flat structure where everybody in the team would give feedback to each other. So whether you're Wayne, who's been there for a couple of years, selling really well, or someone completely new, you can give feedback to each other and you can learn from each other. We would do that every week in our Monday morning meeting. We would actually sit and listen to a call together and then say what we were learning from it, what we would do differently. And it meant that we could talk through in detail, even very small things about the words you use, An example of this might be talking about a marketing plan instead of a marketing proposal. It's a very small thing, but you're talking to someone in a strategic way instead of a salesy way. And there were small things like that we implemented. The wildest and perhaps most impactful was a bingo card.
We love bingo, don't we?
That is so relevant right now. Tell us more about the bingo card.
I know it sounds wild. Like, what on earth does a bingo card have to do with sales? But I think one of the most difficult things to kind of find is that if you're getting stuck in the sales process and deals aren't moving forwards, it often comes back to the discovery call. And it's really difficult to track that down, because the point we get a yes or no is when you're in the middle of the proposal and they say no, or perhaps you even go back to the start and you're like, well, the lead was never right. They were never the right fit for us anyway. And then you blame marketing probably, or the lead themselves. But actually, the tricky thing about the discovery call is that it can feel fantastic and everyone on the call feels great. The lead even says, I'm ready to start next week. I'm so excited. This is perfect. We're good to go. And then they ghost and you never hear from them again. And everyone's like, what on earth has happened? And it's in this discovery piece that disconnect kind of comes about. So when you make a bingo card, you can build out those bits of qualification criteria, but also the information you actually need for your proposals so that you hit it every time without having a script. And we pressure tested this on literally hundreds of leads, right? The volume of leads Exposure Ninja are able to make themselves is amazing because they are a great agency. And so we pressure tested this, and it was the difference between, close rates that are extremely average to close rates that were really good, was making sure if the sales team hit bingo, because they got all of these criteria ticked off, you actually can, vastly improve the sales process.
We've done something like really similar, obviously like different type of agency, but a recruitment agency. And it's so true. It starts from like that first conversation, doesn't it? And how much information, or like the right kind of information you gather, because put it in recruitment terms, if we qualify, we call the discovery call a vacancy, and we get all the right information and we tick all the things off, you've just got such a better chance of being able to actually find the candidate, and in your terms actually deliver the solution, and then tailor your proposal to that solution. So it really does like start from the beginning, and we've had a bingo card in a different sense.
Yeah, there's a different
which is maybe what we laughed
but
at.
I like that bingo card.
But we have something like really, really similar, like a set criteria that you've got to hit before you can move forward in the next sort of phase. So that's really great bit of advice for like building out a bit of a sales team, isn't it? Is that first point of contact. It's really, really useful. I was curious to know with like Exposure Ninja, did it go from obviously like a great business of 30 people to start off with, and then you took it further? Did it go from like really organic sales and like growth to then you guys coming in and being like really intentional with thinking, right, we want to grow the business, we're going to be really intentional with the sales, and this is what we're going to do for it? Did it go from that to that, or?
Yeah, I would say it did. I think Exposure Ninja has a really big lead volume for marketing agencies in general. Most agencies, would dream of this kind of lead volume. And I think that can mean that you want to take all of the leads all of the time, which is often a temptation in any business. But being more intentional about which ones are the best qualified, which ones are actually the ones that you can help the most, and which ones perhaps would be a better fit somewhere else, is a huge piece of it. And we were constantly iterating on that and figuring out what that needed to look like to do the best job for the client, but also for ourselves, for our close rates. And I think that's a really big piece of developing in any agency, in any business that's service-based, is figuring out what your sweet spot is and not being too tempted into kind of working with anyone that you can to get that revenue line up.
That's difficult to get into though, isn't it? Because it's quite a luxury sort of mindset to be in, especially if you're maybe not hitting targets and stuff, and you think, oh, if I get this in, then I can like hit a target, blah blah blah.
Well, if we go back, then I guess it's down to, because they did get such a high volume of leads. So what were they do? Were they doing anything differently than what other agencies aren't at the moment? That maybe the lead volume needs to come up so more agencies can be more intentional about the clients that they work with.
Yeah, I mean, without giving away too much of their secret sauce, but there are some things that Tim's talked about in the book that I wrote, so I think it would be okay with me sharing. A big piece for them is the book that Tim wrote in, I think, 2012. I'm gonna say, I should know. It's called How to Get to the Top of Google. That drives a lot of leads for them because it's a good book, but also they offer a free review to help people working with that. And the other piece is their YouTube. So they just hit 100,000 subscribers this week.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, and that's been a really big piece for them. It's one of those things, I think, where when you're trying to start that, it's hard work, it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, and you don't know if it's going to work, right?
When did they start YouTube?
Gosh, I'm actually not entirely sure.
Was it early days? Was it like...
It was... I mean, I was already, I think, head of sales by then. So it's, not super early days, but...
It's still quite early though, isn't it? It's still pretty early. I mean, that's amazing, like, to have that... I always think for people to have that foresight that long ago to be starting YouTube channels and, putting out content about your business. What sort of content would they put out which actually made it a success for them?
All educational.
Is it?
All educational, yeah. So it's all about trying to help people do their marketing better.
That's interesting. That's really good. And then with like your position and being a bit more intentional about sales, what was the sort of split between having like incoming leads and going out and trying to generate sort of new business?
Very much inbound focused. Yeah, very much inbound.
So it's a lot about how to like filter through the right ones, qualify them better. And
definitely, because they had that luxury of those inbound leads. It's kind of a different... I think there are different approaches that I take with agencies now than I did then, because the situation is different depending on how that agency is set up, but also I think the market has changed a lot in the last few years as well. Potentially making outbound harder in some ways, and it's saturated with a lot of AI nonsense sometimes. But that does leave a lot of room for, if you're doing it smart and you're sometimes using old school methods like putting things in the post, you actually can get through and cut through some of that noise.
Because I'm always really curious, and I don't really know a lot about like marketing agencies, but I'm always really curious to know like how they win business. That's quite a broad question, isn't it? But with our business, a recruitment agency, a lot of it is actually like has to be really intentional, doesn't it? Like a lot of it is outbound, and you could maybe put some things like sending like bulk emails out with candidates on it as like marketing. Still think that's quite intentional, but like for the majority of agencies, do they have the luxury of all of their leads being sort of incoming, or do they have to do a lot of outbound?
So there's this wonderful thing that happens in marketing agencies. It's a very strange phenomenon to witness. And it's part of what creates this founder sales trap I was talking about earlier, which is that because it's the skill that they have, they undervalue it, but also they don't set enough time aside to do it. So you have this piece where revenue starts to drop off. So they take some of the delivery team and they get them to do some of the marketing for their own agency. The leads start to come up, which then means they've got some more work to deliver. So they take that team back off of doing their own marketing to focus on delivery, and all the leads drop off again. And so you get this kind of roller coaster, bumpy ride thing that happens. But also you'll find a lot of marketing agencies are not doing any of their own marketing, or certainly not in the way that they would do it for a client.
Because they're too focused on delivery.
They're too focused on delivery. But because it's the same team that you're kind of sharing between those two things, they end up prioritizing the revenue that's coming in and not putting enough into the future and setting that time aside. And you see that play out in some really interesting ways where anyone in marketing would say, if you're testing a pay-per-click campaign, you want to give it at least 3 months. It needs to have a decent budget because there's data that needs to build up. It needs to learn so that it can optimize and all these things. And yet I would say in at least 80% of agencies I speak to, when they test their own pay-per-click campaign, they will not put enough budget in and they'll test it for a month and it doesn't work, so they stop. And it's such it's one of these things where you can't see the wood through the trees, right? In your own business, it can be really difficult to kind of see those things that you're bumping up against.
I really resonate with what you said about the, going from delivery to sales. I think that's really hard to, and really difficult thing to do, even if like, and you're really intentional about being like really consistent with sales. Because again, like applying it to recruitment, maybe like the last year and a half, we've been really intentional about being like a sales business and like doing lots of business development, as well as working on the clients we've got. And we go through different phases within the market where we probably, we go through a couple of months of being really good with BD and like cold calling, new business in, new jobs. But then it's like we hit a bottleneck where we've got so many of those sort of jobs and we've worked out a really good way to filter through them. And then we spend like another 2 months on delivery. Yeah. And it's so hard to like be like, right, well, I've got all these great positions and great like bits of business that I need to work on. But then I know that I have to keep going with the sales, because if I stop that, I'm just going to get to a point where I'm like up and down and I finish all the delivery and I'm like, right, well, I've got to start again with the sales.
Yeah.
So that's what we've experienced. So I really resonate with that. I reckon there's loads of other people out there that are like that as well. But how do you recommend a business to get out of that peaks and troughs? Because I actually see that as a really big part of, not being able to grow, because you're stuck in it, aren't you? How do you get out of that?
It's huge, and it's having these parameters built in and sticking to them, which is really difficult. And I think this is part of where it's really important to talk about the revenue mix in general. So we have sales, we have marketing, we have retention, and those pieces are so linked. And yet we like to talk about them separately as though they live on their own. And often when you kind of dig into that, particularly in service-based businesses that have a lot of retainers, you'll find that when delivery is busy and they're kind of hitting their ceiling on what they can deliver capacity-wise, actually a lot of times they will have a lot of legacy clients that have never had a price increase, that have probably, reached a point where they might be better served elsewhere. It's not their fault. It's not the business's fault. It's just your business has grown and those businesses perhaps haven't quite kept up, or they're used to a different service level because of when they joined your business several years ago. And so you're busy running over here trying to keep these small clients on lower pricing.
Because it's a bit easier as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's also revenue. You don't want to let revenue go. But that means you're filling up your team with lower hourly rates and potentially, let's face it, sometimes quite tricky clients. Sometimes the smaller ones tend to take up a little bit more time than you might like. And then we're saying, but we need more sales that we're going to put in on top, and we need time to do this marketing. And because these things are linked, we're kind of making a rod for our own backs that keeps us stuck in this perpetual cycle going round and round. Whereas if we were to say, okay, some of these are no longer really the right fit for us, and we're probably not the right fit for them, we're going to refer them to someone who we know can do a great job, and we're going to free ourselves up on this bottom end bit. You've then freed up that little bit of capacity in your team. That little bit of capacity in your team can either be ring-fenced as marketing and sales time for your own business, or it creates that capacity to deal with those new leads that you're bringing in. And then that means there's space at the top to start making sure that you're focusing on that top of funnel piece. But because we don't see all these three things as being interconnected, quite often that bit gets missed. And so we just keep worrying about this top bit when actually it's the bottom bit that's holding us back.
It's like you need to like take a step out of it to see down and then make that decision, because it is a tricky decision, like you say, it's like really saying tricky. Bye to revenue and clients that you might have had for many years that you've got a good relationship with as well. That's really difficult to do, isn't
really
it?
Difficult, and it's not always the right thing. It's like there are definitely clients that
they pay more, if they want more.
if you and there are different types of value as well, right? If there are clients that the team love working on, that's important too. Here I'm really talking about the clients that are probably not paying enough. They're not that happy because you're not necessarily able to give them as much kind of attention as you used to, because they are a smaller client. They haven't grown as much as you might like. And they're probably taking up quite a lot of time. it's those ones that kind of fall into that category where they're slightly awkward, let's face it, and they're never going to grow, that you need to kind of be able to tackle head on. You definitely don't do all that all in one fell swoop either, right? You don't say, right, you 10, you're out. You pick a couple and you have an open conversation with them, try and encourage them to expand their account if that's something that is on the cards. You can also put a price increase in place. And this again is an area where quite often it's been 5 years since you last tried to do a price increase, which makes a much more difficult conversation.
That's always tough, isn't it?
So much more tough than if there's like a regular cadence to it and everyone's used to it and it's all fine. But it's having those conversations very strategically and spaced out in the right time.
I think it always goes back to like that qualification that you mentioned at the start. And I think maybe a good example of what we've tried doing is, you qualify your client at the start and you deliver, that's great. But then, you should almost be requalifying as much as possible to actually see if that business is kept up with where your business wants to go as well. And we find ourselves in a similar sort of position where maybe we do it a little bit subconsciously now, but we've started like grading different clients and different accounts and sort of try to requalify things as much as possible. But I think what that's done is, now that we've started doing that, I think you automatically kind of know whether an account maybe, I don't want to say isn't worth your time, but that is kind of what it, what I want to say sort of thing, isn't it? Because if your business is progressing and sort of changing and moving up, those businesses need to be aligned with what you want and what you need to be doing, rather than staying on the business that you worked with 5 years ago. 5 years ago, full stop.
I mean, it's difficult. It feels uncomfortable to say, and it is uncomfortable, but at the same time, we have to accept that best business is always when there's alignment. And if the alignment's not there, then we have to change something. A great way to kind of assess this is to use a matrix. So like a quadrant, and you have your small client, low growth opportunity, small client, high growth opportunity, big client, high growth opportunity, big client, kind of stable. And by breaking your clients into those sections, it becomes really easy to see, okay, these are the ones we need to focus on developing. This one needs a proper like biz dev plan for how we're going to grow them over the next 6 months, year, 2 years. These big stable ones, fantastic. We love them. Let's give them a really good project manager, as opposed to someone who is more kind of biz dev focused. They're probably on those bigger ones that have the more growth potential. And then those small ones that are in the low growth category are the ones that we might start having some conversations.
Yeah. With I do like the conversation between like delivery and sales. That's a really exciting bit for me. From speaking to like previous agency owners, I feel like maybe, the vibe that they were in was, a little bit up and down. I think that is a big part of reason why companies, even recruitment agencies, our business and agencies maybe don't grow. And I was, speaking to, I can't remember a few specifics, but agency owners previously, and the directors and the owners were the salespeople, so exactly what you've said. And what we've tried to do, in effect, is maybe try to split like the sales and the delivery function, so to separate them. There's loads of pros and cons of doing that. The cons is a bit like miscommunication sometimes, and the pros are, you can really focus on the sales clients, and then the delivery really focuses on the delivery. Is that what maybe set you guys apart at Exposure Ninja? Because it sounds like you and Tim were like really intentional, right? We're going to go and be sales. We're going to go out there and get sales. But I feel like maybe a lot of other smaller agencies are a little bit less intentional about their sales, and they kind of keep delivery and sales as sort of same thing, and are in that like up and downy sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the question I suppose is, after all of that, is what advice would you give? Like, is that the sort of advice that you'd give? Is that typical of an agency to go out and really be like
this is a big question, and there are a couple of patterns that I see play out here. So on the it was Exposure Ninja unusual piece. Yes, in some ways, in that we actually built out a fairly big sales team. Usually, even in an agency where they're building out a sales team, you might see them have kind of up to 3. We got way beyond that in several points. So that was unusual.
That doesn't feel unusual to me from like a recruitment point of view agency, but it obviously is with marketing.
In marketing, it is unusual.
That's what surprises me.
Yeah, and I think in marketing agencies, the founder pattern that you were just talking about is a huge one. Very much they are the salesperson. And to some extent, there's nothing wrong with that, in that they do have a bit of a superpower for conversion. There is a weight that comes into the room when the founder joins, but also
The pressure.
a pressure. And let's face it, they've been having these conversations since day one of the business. They've had hundreds of them. They know what to say, what not to say, and you know what all the ins and outs of how the service was made. Plus, they can make decisions on pricing. So they do have a bit of a superpower. But the danger is, if ever you want to exit your agency, if you want to have that kind of option available to you, no one can buy that business because they're basically buying you. And if you are, you know, the tent pole holding up that tent, and then we take you out of it, that's not going to work. And that's a huge risk for any buyer. But the flip side of it, even if you don't want to exit, even if you plan to stay in your agency forever, you just said there's a big weight that comes with it, right? And that is huge, a huge piece of it, because it all relies on you. You have to win the sales. Let's face it, if the revenue were to drop dramatically, you have to make some really tough decisions about your team that you love. There's a lot of pressure that sits on that. So building out this sales team is a really important piece, and doing that early, because the earlier you do that, the better that team will be able to take over from you. Leaving it really late just means you've got even more to try and like translate from all the stuff that you've learned and try and put it into someone else. So doing it early is a much better thing, but you still want to stay close to it. It's still the lifeblood of the agency. So you have to know what's going on with those deals and kind of be ready to step in at any moment.
Not be it sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's delegation, not abdication.
Yeah. I think speak from experience, it's a really like important point, because you can't always, you know, if you're, say I'm like the sole biller or like person that brings in the business, you can't be at your best 100% of the time. You know, so it also mitigates those peaks and troughs as well, doesn't it? So to build out a process where other people are, you know, pieces in the puzzle where you can then manage that as well as do your own sales, I think it also gives just an element of stability. But then you can also, you can't grow your sales yourself. You've got a limit, haven't you? So if you're running at like 5 out of 10, you can only go up to 10 out of 10, and that's where your business stops. But like a sales team and process, you can grow that, well, whatever you like, sort of in effect, can't you? So
absolutely,
it also helps with growth.
Absolutely. And, you know, the last thing any founder wants is to be the bottleneck. They always want to be the one that's driving it forwards. And the conversation I had when I was writing the book, I had this conversation with Mark Wright, who won The Apprentice, exited Climb Online, Luke Tobin, who's now my business partner, and also with Tim as well from Exposure Ninja, was that if you have someone who comes into the business as a salesperson and they sell at, say they're 60 to 80% as effective as you, so they're less effective, but you know they're getting the majority of it.
It's a good percentage.
If you have two that are 60% as effective as you, you've got 120%.
That's a really good way of putting it, isn't it? Yeah. That's what I was trying to explain, but you've just simplified that so much better. You can have all these 70, 80%, which amounts to a bigger percent, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas you can only be 100%.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the agency founders that understand all of this and want to do all of this, not just agency founders, any business owners, but it feels like too much of an investment to build out a sales team, like actually investing in a person. So is there any advice that these people can maybe make a small step towards that to realise the benefit of it and then go on to make the investment?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, absolutely. So there's another pattern here that I see time and time again. I've seen this in so many agencies. Actually, hurts me a little bit because what I see is they interview some salespeople. They find someone who's fantastic. They've got an amazing background. They've got the sales record. You know, they know their stuff. They can do this. They bring them in, and within 6 months, they're out. And it's really painful for everyone. They've spent a lot of money on making this hire and it's just not worked out. They've not seen an ROI. The reason for that is because of this founder sales trap piece. It's because of this up and down piece with the leads. So we're not feeding those salespeople consistently. But it's also this translation piece, the bit I was talking about earlier where you know the business inside out, you know your leads inside out, you know how your service was built. If you don't spend enough time translating that and codifying it, that salesperson will always fail. They will always fail. And you can give them, 6 months, but realistically it takes 3 to 6 months for them to actually get up to speed and to figure out their pattern, what works and what doesn't. So my advice for someone who wants to do this is to start figuring out how to codify what you do before you even touch that hire. Because you need to be able to give them the system, the manual, the right words to say, down to the phrase book that can help them before they're ever actually going to be able to succeed. And this is why using things like the bingo card, using some objection handling, like just noting these things down, getting into the nitty-gritty of why you said that particular word instead of a different one is really important, because you've got that manual then that you can hand over to someone else. But usually what the onboarding pack looks like is, here's our services, here are our competitors, here are our top clients, and I want some more law firms, please. Right, training done.
Off we go.
Off they go, and they fail.
Yeah. It's very difficult to do that and explain that, isn't it? Because I feel like we've only maybe understood that in the last couple of years where, again, putting it in recruitment terms, the few things that we've done to try and do that and like replicate what we can do, and like what we do is, again, that back to that discovery sheet, the bingo card is exactly the same. We've tried to like replicate things so there's a clear actual process in terms of fees, in terms of like our recruitment process, and for agency, what would be like the agency process until like from like discovery, proposal to sale sort of thing. And we've tried to line that all up on like OneDrive so that everybody's got access to it, so that everybody can see what's going on. They don't have to ask questions, they can jump in and know all the answers straight away. That's quite a hard place to get to though, isn't it? That's not easy to do.
No, there's a lot of work that goes into it for sure. And I feel I found some, I'm not going to say shortcuts because shortcuts implies it's easy and it still isn't easy.
Yeah.
But I found some frameworks and methodologies, let's say, for getting to that point faster. There are some particular kind of training sessions and topics that I would tend to work with a new team on, and always have the founder in those conversations, because how they do it is really important. And usually those kind of start looking around the bingo card piece we talked about, qualification, but also language, personalities, and how you deal with people of different personalities coming into a deal. Are they attention to detail focused? Are they perhaps a bit more headlinesy and just want the facts quick? Are they interested in building rapport? Are they not? There are some real pieces here that founders are often doing completely intuitively. They don't know they're doing it. And this is part of why, just as you're saying, it's so hard, because you don't know that you're doing that. You just do it naturally because you've developed that kind of gut feel. So we have to make those things explicit and make gut feel something that can actually be written into a process, which is so hard.
Yeah.
But if you follow these kind of steps and systems to do it in a way that is systematic, you do get there quicker than if you kind of just trying to pull it in as you go.
Yeah.
I think what's also really hard is, well, a lot of things, but a couple that spring to mind is founders have been doing this for so long that they don't even, like you say, they don't realise what they're doing. So it's so hard to be able to put it pen to paper. But also that takes so much time for the founder to actually sit back, not do any founder-led sales or anything else on the business, to actually implement all of that as well and think about. Because just thinking about, we had a new starter that came into marketing, and, I'm definitely not the oracle of marketing, but I was thinking like, there's so many things that I would just do naturally. And then to even have to explain that, it felt really weird for me, felt really strange. So for a founder who's been doing it for so many years, and it's, like you say, their baby, their business, they are the business. I can't imagine how hard that is.
But what's the benefit of that then? I suppose the benefit is that you can then replicate and grow.
Exactly.
Quite simply.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I would argue you are a bit of an oracle in marketing before we skip on too far. But it's cost benefit, right? And also weighing up, do you want to be stuck in this cycle forever of the leads going up and down, the sales going up and down, revenue going up and down? Or do you want to change that? If you want to change that, you've got to get serious about it, and you've got to make some sacrifices, ring fence that time for your marketing and make sure that you're investing in it. But also, if you're using frameworks, it doesn't have to be that bad. Like, it's still painful, but it's not like, seriously in-depth painful. It's not as painful as not getting any sleep because the revenue is not where you want it to be.
That's a good point.
I'm going to flip it on its head and maybe, because we've spoken a lot about the sales, but once we start getting the sales in, then what happens with delivery?
Yeah.
That's the hard bit as well, isn't it?
My goodness. I mean, this is all one beast, right? We have to treat the whole animal, not just kind of the head bit. Like we have to actually treat all the delivery piece as well. There's the handover, a whole bunch of stuff goes wrong in the handover. I think you touched on it earlier. Getting that onboarding has to be absolutely beautiful, right? Because this is the moment they're parting with their cash. So they need to know they've made a good decision. We have to reassure them the whole way through that. And we need to have the highest standards. Then we've actually got to deliver well. Plus, we've got to think about, when are we going to upsell them? Can we grow the account? Can we retain the account? How do the contracts work? There's a whole bunch of stuff that all feeds into this as well. And I think where those three things meet, the marketing, the sales, and the retention piece, is the whole revenue funnel. And that's how we need to talk about it and how we need to treat it. So you asked earlier about separating delivery and sales and if that's a good idea or a bad idea. If you separate them out, they still need to be part of the same conversation, and making them part of the same conversation has to be a really active process that you put energy into and facilitate. So that looks like having regular meetings between all three of them where they can feed back without it turning into a bun fight, right? Because this is the other, common pattern that, pretty much anyone in a service business will probably recognize, where sales and marketing don't always necessarily 100% get on. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Depends on, how much pressure's on and how you're dealing with your culture. But also the same can happen with delivery, right? We say, we lost that client because you guys sold it wrong. The expectations were wrong. Or, it was the wrong lead anyway. They were never going to be the right fit, whatever it is. So having some clear rules around how those conversations work and clear systems for being able to pick up those problems and try and deal with them before they're problems is really important. And that comes down to having the right meeting cadences and having the right systems in place for early warning mechanisms rather than, they've just said they want to leave.
Is that going to be completely different with like every business, or could you give us like an applicable example of what you've done maybe to help that communication? Because we see it here, it is really hard. You've got somebody focusing on the client side sales and then somebody just delivery, and it's fair enough, isn't it? Sometimes things do get lost in communication, or you think, I could have done that better if I was speaking to them, or blah blah blah. How regular do they have these meetings? What would you sort of apply to that sort of circumstance? How would you better that communication?
Yeah, I think it depends on the culture that you have in part. But there are things that you can do ahead of those meetings to lay some ground rules. And that's to say, how do we want these conversations to go, and to actually brainstorm that as a team? How are we going to deal with conflict? How are we going to deal when we feel like you're trying to blame me? How are we going to have that conversation in a way that's actually constructive? How do we want to feel at the end of these conversations? And what is the big goal? What are we actually working towards here? Is it to have, X revenue? Is it to have X profit? Is it because we want to be the biggest recruitment agency in the Southwest by 2026? I don't know, making stuff up. But whatever it is, we have to be aligned to actually can I swear? We have to actually give a shit about it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we actually have to give a shit about it and be able to all be behind it. So we have those conversations before you do any meetings. Those ground rules can be reiterated at the start of the meeting if you need to. If it's going to take a little while to bed in, then you might kind of say, just a reminder, this is how we deal with this. And then when you have those meetings, you're looking at having a clear agenda with a clear an equal share of voice. And that one, I think, is a piece where it can quite often go off. Partly because you have different characters in the room. Quite often your salespeople will be quite loud and bouncy and want to chat. And that's very stereotypical, but you know, that is quite often the way. Whereas you might have someone on the delivery team might be a bit more reserved, perhaps, because they are more technical focused. So we need to split the agenda in such a way that they have the same amount of time to talk, that the importance of what they're saying is treated equally, regardless of seniority, which is also something that can go awry, and that's explicit, and we actively manage that. So if someone is taking over the meeting too much, we might need to let them know that in a polite way, obviously. But creating that space to have those conversations is absolutely essential if you want this to go right, and to keep away from a blame culture as much as you can. Because once you start going down that road, I mean, the battle's lost, whether you're talking about revenue delivery, whatever it is.
Sounds like a huge part of it is actually creating the right kind of culture for that as well. It's like the feedback culture rather than a blame culture. And that's something which we'll come on to, I suppose, a little bit later, because it's a big old part in itself, isn't it? But actually feeds really heavily into if you are going to separate those things. Yeah, the communication. Do you have to separate those two things, like the sales function and the delivery? Because what we've seen is if you separate the sales to like just client side and then delivery, you obviously focus more on that, but also you get the consistency of it. But do you actually do you have is that like the playbook? Is that it, or can you have people doing both and still grow like that?
So you can have people doing both, and in a lot of smaller agencies, that's something that's often experimented with. It does work to a point, but there is a point at which it's very hard to scale because you don't have that focus and you get, again, this trap of the peaks and troughs piece. If you've got one big client that's got a problem, nothing's happening on sales because everyone needs to go and jump on that. So you're kind of replicating the same problem, but lower down the system, but it's still the same as what the founder would be doing in the same trap. So having some separation is really important. But it comes back to this culture piece. If your delivery team are able to join some of those sales calls and give some of that support, feed into proposals, and have a conversation with the salesperson where there actually is some really good balance between this tension, right? That it's really important, this tension. So you have it in two places. You have it between sales and marketing, and you have it between sales and operations. That tension is absolutely essential. If it's kept in balance, it will all be fine. And the balance piece is, as ever, the difficult bit. So we want to have it possible for delivery and sales to be aligned, to work in the same way, and to understand the commercial difficulty that comes into this, which is balancing pricing, what we're promising, getting someone through the door, with delivery, expectation, and retention. And seeing those things as equal, knowing that they're equal, and being able to have those conversations in the right way is all culture.